Hi, humans. Welcome back. Question number two. Well, just to recap, last week we talked about I was on a panel with middle schoolers and high schoolers. They had lots of questions, and I found those questions to be extremely interesting, and I wanted to share them with you. I think that oftentimes us as adults, we may not want to admit that we have the same questions. We don't want to talk about our own struggles or our own insecurities because as adults, we feel we should already have the answer, but we don't. So I wanted to let's talk about it. So I want to ask you the same questions. So the second question was, what is the difference between religion and spirituality? Do you think that there's a difference between religion and spirituality? What are your thoughts? What do you think? What's your experience? Tell me about it. For me, I think that there definitely is a difference with spirituality and religion. I will say that if you would have asked me the same question back in my 20s, my answer would have been different than what it is today. I think that as a mature adult, I think that as a mature Christian, a mature spiritual person, my perspective is a little different because of my point of references and my experience, obviously. So I think that there is a difference. I did write a couple little notes that I want to share with you. Maybe you can take some notes of your own and just what does that look like for you? What does those experiences look like for you? What does that mean for you now, today? How does that applicable today? So what I wrote down as far as the differences, I put four big differences about religion for me, or four aspects that describe religion to me, is going to be that religion is an organized system that is very community oriented, especially us Latinos, where we like to spend a lot of time in the community, with the community, with our community. We create communities. So definitely like minded people that believe in the same thing will create communities. Um, I think that religion is a defined practices. They look a certain particular way. We behave a certain particular way. We act a certain way. We talk a certain way. We do certain things. Defined practices, defined texts, tradition focused. So religion is very organized, if you want to call it that, and it looks a particular way, regardless of what religion that you follow or you practice. Um, I was born in a Spanish Pentecostal church. So I'm very accustomed to a lot of traditional things. I'm very accustomed to a lot of defined practices: water baptism, communion, Sunday school, missionettes, like all these things that we're very accustomed to. Those were things that I did and I grew up in. I did all of those things because I was raised into that. Not that I disagreed with it, not that I don't agree with it now, not that I didn't like it, or it's just the way I was brought up. So to me, God was a set of rules. God was a set of activities that looked a certain way, a behavior that looked a certain way. So I related God to what interpreted the Bible was saying, what I understood the pastor was saying from the altar, what I understood the teacher was teaching me, the missionist leader. So to me, my experience with God was what others said it should look like, what it's supposed to be. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it was bad, that it was out of order, and that I do it different now, because I do. But there's some things that are fundamental. But to me, that's what religion is. Spirituality was very different and is very different, because spirituality to me is something that's more internal. It's something more personal. It's between me and God. So my relationship with God is my relationship with God, my existence, my behavior, my thoughts, my processes, my understanding, my theology. It's me and God, where religion was what everyone said that I was supposed to do. That was my understanding, my perspective on religion and spirituality. I went on a missions trip, and this mission trip changed my life. As I mentioned before, I was very involved in church. I was very involved in the Christian walk and the Christian behaviors. I was in church. I was so involved in so many things. I went to Colombia, changed my life, because everything that I knew in my mind, I knew. I was taught this. I experienced it with my family and my church and all of this. When I went to this mission trip, I saw things that I had never seen before on my own. I read about them in the Bible. I heard about them in Sunday school. I've even seen movies about it. when you hear, for example, you hear about demonic manifestations, when you hear about miracles and people being healed, I heard about it from so many different people, people I love, people I trusted. But when I experienced it on my own, changed. One of the things that was impacted me the most is there was a moment that I lay hands on this woman. She had a huge, I don't know, tumor, mass, growth, whatever it was. And I laid hands on her because I was praying for her. She wanted healing. I came in agreement with her and I prayed with her. And in that prayer, during that prayer, that massive ball that she had, it just disappeared right as I was praying. So granted, I was praying for a miracle. I was praying, but I never touched it. I've never experienced it. I never saw it on my own. So as I have my hands on her and my hand kind of went in because it disappeared, I was in shock. And at that moment I realized God is real. After that I saw, like I said, demons being just leaving people. Like I saw people healed, like physically healed. I touched healings. So I was a part of that. So everything that I had learned, everything that I had read about, everything that I had heard about became real when I experienced it. So I no longer served the God of my pastor. I didn't serve the God of my mom and my dad. I served the God that I now believed in on my own. I had my own personal encounter. So being that I had my own personal spiritual encounter, it affected how I moved forward from that. So though I would always think religious things are just a certain particular way, you do baptism, it looks like this. You do communion, it has to be just like this. Now I did it completely different. I tithed before because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to tithe. But when I had a spiritual encounter and my life changed, I now tithe because it was a discipline that I was developing in myself. So I started to have my own experience with God. And as I had my own experience with God, I realized that my existence changed. So I no longer did things because that's what I was told to do. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's what it's supposed to look like. I did it because that's how I felt, was how I manifested and reflected my relationship with God, my spirituality. And I want to leave you with the Bible verse from Romans 12, verse 1 and 2, and how that changed me once I went from religious mindset to a spiritual encounter with God. And Romans 12 in the New International Version, it reads, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." And when I read that in the past and when I've heard it a lot about it, to me, again, in the religious context, back when I was just viewing things in that through those lens, I always thought that it would say, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. I always read that and I always heard about it in the sexual context, like save yourself for marriage. You have to not be promiscuous. You can't look at porn. Like I looked at it all these different ways that were related to just sexuality. And then when I had a spiritual encounter with the Lord, I realized that that verse isn't just talking to me about only my spiritual body or my physical body in the sexual context, but it was also talking about, for me, it was also meaning like your body needs to be sacrificed and the Lord. Take care of your body, eat well, exercise, like be good to your body because your body is a living sacrifice. There's times that I don't want to worship God. I don't want to raise my hands. I don't want to fast. I don't want to do those things. But you know what? Sacrifice that because my body becomes a living sacrifice unto the Lord. It says, do not conform. Don't settle to the way everybody is. Be transformed, renewing of your mind. Like now my mind is different because now I'm no longer doing things because of religious lens. I'm doing it because that's what I believe. That's my conviction. That I may not be the same as everyone else. That I may not think, and I don't mean just people of the world. I mean even people within the church that call themselves Christian. That I may not compare myself to the people around me. That I may always compare myself to Christ. That I may always be like Christ. So to me, yeah, there is a big difference between religion and spirituality. My spirituality is manifested through religious activities. So tell me, what's your difference? Talk to you soon. We have some more questions.